Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and a good morning and evening to those attending from other parts of the world. Welcome to the VLSFO Trends, Issues, and Best Practices webinar, jointly organized by CTI-Maritec, Innospec, and its Hong Kong representative, host Mos. To our esteemed media covering this event, kindly note it is held under Chatham House rules. Delegates who have questions during the webinar may post them inside the chat box. I'm Gabian Chew, Senior Editor and Founder of Manifold Times. I started this publication at the beginning of 2018 to share bunkering news coming from Singapore, Asia, and beyond. To date, we have about 20,000 people visiting our website every month looking for the latest updates. IMO 2020 has introduced a new breed of low sulfur fuels which have not been entirely trouble-free. Even today, vessels are still having issues with the use and storage of VLSFOs. Moreover, numerous vessels have started embarking on trials with biofuels, which present their own unique set of issues. With IMO 2030, IMO 2050, and the expected multi-fuel solution adopted by the shipping industry, it is safe to comment that issues with marine fuels will continue in the foreseeable future. However, all is not lost, my friends. Today, we have two former marine engineers with sailing experience to provide us with tips and insights on VLSFO trends, issues, best practices, and more. They are Bharath Kumar, Technical Manager at CTI-Maritec, and Maritec Chew, Regional Marine Sales Manager, Asia Pacific at Innospec. Bharath was working with Maersk for 17 years to the rank of Chief Engineer. He was part of the Maersk team involved in implementation of various retrofit projects to improve the fleet's fuel efficiency and statutory compliance, particularly with respect to fuel management on board. He moved on to Maritec as a technical manager for fuel testing solutions, providing his expertise in helping resolve fuel-specific problems for their clientele. Martin, meanwhile, is a marine engineer by profession and started his sailing career with NOL and later AET. He has taken a few roles after coming ashore in 2006, including being Senior Surveyor Auditor and Business Development Manager for the Singapore arm of Lloyd's Register Asia. He later joined Ritmers Ship Management Singapore as a vessel manager and moved on to Innospec in 2014. Today, Martin is the head of sales and marketing for Marine for APAC, serving Innospec's major marine customers. Before the presentations begin proper, here's a short message from Joyce, who is representing Innospec's Hong Kong agent, host Most.
Thank you, Gabian. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. I'm Joyce from Hosmo Group. Many people may know Hosmos is one of the Asia leading marine radio communication and navigational system provider. We began in Hong Kong in 1989. Since then, we have expanded into international market to better serve our global client. Actually, we are also being a distributor of Innospec in selling fuel additive, covering Hong Kong and South China area. So if you have any inquiry, please to contact us.
Hey, thank you very much, Joyce. Okay, so let us now first hear from Bharath at CTI-Maritec. He will be presenting a forecast of VLSFO's quality trend heading into 2022 while sharing some data on biofuels. Bharath, the screen is yours.
All right, thank you, Gabian. Thank you for that introduction. Let me just start by sharing my screen. And there we go, share. And I hope you guys can see the presentation. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, we can.
Yeah, thank you. So let's start. Okay, let's just begin. Gabian has already introduced me. Thank you. I'm the technical manager from CTI-Maritec in charge of technical advisory and solutions. We are very glad to have you as part of this webinar, and together with Innospec, we intend to provide you with our understanding of the VLSFO issues that have occurred over the past 2 years, and maybe offer some insight to the testing and remedial measures possible to manage your vessels better. So with that, I would like to kick off with a very, very brief introduction of CTI-Maritec and what we do. So CTI Group is specializes in inspection, testing, certification, and a consultancy in the fields of health, safety, and environment. Maritec, which is a member of the CTI Group, is headquartered in Singapore and is part of the CTI Group and provides the same services specific for marine fuel quality and environmental regulatory compliance. Our service portfolio, it will include water, fuel, and hazmat testing solutions. We are one of the leading marine fuel testing labs, providing a worldwide network and support towards water testing and hazmat solutions at the moment. Where are we located? We are located in Singapore, a small island nation, and we have regional representation in Europe and Asia Pacific to service our clients. Our fuel testing program ensures a very fast and accurate response from ISO accredited labs based both in Singapore and recently from China also. So our services is not only regarding to standard analysis that's being done, we also aim to provide advanced forensic analysis on fuel issues and any troubleshooting, which is well recognized by many P&I clubs at the moment, as is shown here. And at the same time, we strive to provide well-documented statistical bunker and fuel testing records for our clients' review and records. So with that, that's a very brief introduction. With that, let's start with the main topic. So first, I would like to provide an overview of the VLSFO quality that's been bunkered over the last 1 year. So when we look at the VLSFO manifold samples that have been bunkered in 2021, we can see that about 93.7% of the samples tested are within the specification ordered by the receiver. Of the remainder of the samples exceeding the specification, 2.5% were within the ISO 4259 specification, which means that a subsequent retest can result in an on-spec, that is it falling into the green zone. 3.9% of the samples were truly off-spec and can be considered as not meeting the limits imposed by ISO 8217 specification to which it was compared to. This trend that we're observing over here throughout the year is quite similar to the year 2020, and we expect the same level of conformance to continue moving forward for VLSFO residual fuels in particular. Let's have a look at each test characteristic. When we analyze all the off specifications that has occurred over each month and the percentage it contributed over the total off spec for each month, like January, February, March, we can get some insight into the quality trends. So the average tested off spec result in each case is also shown in for each parameter. So what we can see is that the pour point is observed to be the most common off-spec parameter with an average tested value of around 31 degrees. And we're seeing more fuel VLSFOs with poor cold flow properties which are occurring. Viscosity, even though it looks high, it's not been so serious because it's concerned towards each individual vessel's heating capability. And the occurrence points more towards the lack of clarity on the purchase grade of VLSFO between the receiver and the supplier. So the compliance parts, which is regards with this identified by sulfur and flush point, it's been a recurring issue over the past year. It's been recurring this year, and we expect a similar trend to happen over next year of 2022 also. The more important one, the TSP, which is an indicator of the stability of the fuel, shows a reducing trend over the year. However, we are seeing fuels with low values below the specification limit still leading to issues on board. We will discuss a little bit more on this. The remaining parameters have a sporadic off-spec occurrence, and usually when it occurs, it is occurring along with one of the other parameters. Let's move on and look at some of the specific issues which has been highlighted in this slide. VLSFO stability, let's begin with that. So it's been a concerning issue over the last 2 years, and as for every vessel operator, and there has been many problems reported by vessels where a supposedly on-spec fuel has gone on and led to machinery issues on board. So the standard test for total sediment potential recommended by ISO 8217 has not been a very good indicator for VLSFO, and only further analysis by the stability of manual p-value or by Shell method series 1600 can give a better insight to this. What is this manual p-value that I was talking about? So the p-value test was initially developed for the refinery process, and then it was later on extended towards marine bunkers because it's quite a reliable test. So the value ranges from an unstable sample, which is like less than 1.0, and it goes all the way up to values which is greater than 1.5, which is indicating towards a more stable sample with more strategic long-term storage capabilities. Let's have a look at p-value versus TSP. When we compare the trends, we see that there isn't a clear relationship that can be established between these two parameters. So what is our concern here? The point of concern is that the samples that have been tested with poor stability, that is p-value less than 1, indicated in red over here, have the TSPs over the entire range, both above and below the specification limit of 1.1. This is concurrent with the feedback provided where a non-spec fuel has gone on to show poor stability characteristic, leading to fuel system filter blockages, separator overloading. So this is a recurring problem. So which means that TSP, although a referee method indicated in ISO 8217 pertaining to the stability of the fuel, may no longer be a reliable criteria for VLSFO fuels. The p-value may be a good additional preemptive test to perform to weed out any problematic fuels, and we recommend that you do the same as a preemptive test. So moving on, apart from stability, the core properties of VLSFO, more specifically the wax formation of fuel, is starting to become a concern. So your pour point alone may not be an effective method to mitigate the risks associated with wax formation in the storage tanks or the fuel oil system. Let's have a look into more data that has been obtained by the wax analysis, which has been done by WAT and WTT tests conducted by Maritec. Let's try to understand the issue a little bit better here. When we look at the analysis data for the last 1 year, we can see that about 24% of the VLSFOs have pour points about 21 degrees centigrade. This we have identified as a group of fuels with a higher risk of wax formation. And at this point, about 21, we recommend to conduct the wax analysis to identify the temperature at which the wax begins to form and disappear. When we look at the data, when we compare the wax analysis, wax appearance temperature, and to the tested pour point, we observe that the majority of the samples start to form wax at temperatures in excess of 10 degrees above the pour point values, which is a normal storage temperature for most vessel operators, which is being followed. If the correct WAT is not identified, the vessel operator faces the risk of solid waxes forming in the storage tank, which can later manifest as depositions and transfer issues over the course of time. So we continue to recommend, if you don't know your WAT, continue to maintain it 10 degrees above your pour point. However, in the cases where the WAT is being identified, this may be a much better reference value for you to store the fuel. What happens when the WAT is not known and the fuel is kept at a colder temperature? Then we come to wax disappearance temperature. That is the temperature to which it needs to be heated up and held at in order to liquefy back the fuel. So when we compare the temperature, again, we see that most of the values are occurring above the 10 degree above pour point line. So this means that if solid waxes are formed due to low storage temperature, the ability to revert back to liquid fuel may prove to be very difficult. Moreover, we can see that a lot of the fuels have the WDT, which is above 55 degrees centigrade, which is approaching the limit of heating capacity for most storage tank that is filled to max capacity. So this can lead to a very problematic situation as shown here, where the wax fuel sits in the storage tanks as ballast and is unable to be used until it can be heated to the required temperature. So we have to understand at this point that preemptively checking the wax formation temperature, that is the WAT, is now becoming a necessity for VLSFO fuels to ensure safe operations. Moving on, apart from wax, we're also looking at cat fines. So cat fines is still there present in VLSFO fuels, even though it's low sulfur. The ISO 8217 edition caps the maximum amount of cat fines at the manifold inlet between 40 and 60 ppm, depending upon the grade in which you ordered. So at this point, we like to emphasize that proper fuel cleaning and treatment, reducing the cat fine contents of the engine is very important. This is also due to the fact that the cat fines can accumulate in various parts of your fuel oil system, and only routine sampling of different points of the fuel systems can identify and preemptively prevent where issues arising from cat fines in the engines. And we all know that when the damage occurs, it is a very costly affair to replace a liner or pistons. But the good part is that if you have abrasive damage and if it's spotted at an early stage, it can be reversed by effective treatment and reducing the cat fines contents at the engine inlet. So let's have a look at the cat fines detected over the last 1 year. Then we can see that 20% of the samples have registered above 30 ppm. So at this point, when it's above 30 ppm, we recommend that further samples are drawn from the fuel treatment plant on board to ensure the cat fines of the engine inlet is as low as possible. This will give a very good indication of the efficiency of the purification system on board, and it will ensure very good operational safety. So in conclusion, we can say that with proper care, housekeeping, good fuel management on board, it's possible to keep the risk of damage due to cat fines low. And we recommend that you send in a fuel system check sample to your lab when the manifold sample exceeds 30 ppm. Moving on, when we're looking at the combustion properties of VLSFO, normally what happens, the combustion properties of marine fuel has been determined by the calculated carbon aromaticity index, in short CTI, which can give an indication of the ignition properties of the fuel. This is determined by calculation from the density and the viscosity of the fuel. However, ISO has recognized the limitation of this calculation and has recommended an alternative method to check the ignition and combustion properties of the fuel. So one of the methods that's been identified is the fuel combustion analysis, or FCA, by IP541. This identifies the estimated cetane number, which is dependent on the combustion delay which occurs on the test machine. So whatever combustion delay that occurs on the test machine, that is calculated to the estimated cetane number, or the ECN. When we look at the ECN values versus the CCI for VLSFO fuels, which we have tested, we found that majority of the fuels have an acceptable ECN and CCI values. The issue starts to when the ECN falls below 20 and the CCI is deemed to be acceptable by the calculation and the ISO standard. We can see this occurs for about 8% of the tested samples, and this fuel needs to be used with caution. So it should be noted that a fuel combustion analysis method, what is being displayed over here, the results, is done in a laboratory with control conditions, whereas the conditions and the equipment used vary vastly during actual field usage of the fuel. So in the case where a fuel is suspected to have poor ignition and combustion properties, you need to take engine performance parameters, you need to record them and correlate them back to the FCA test results with actual onboard conditions and ensure that any manufacturer's operating limits are not exceeded, and thereby you can prove that the fuel supplied had poor ignition and combustion properties. Okay, we talked about some of the issues that were most commonly occurring issues. Moving on to managing fuel quality issues. Specifically, we're talking about class 5 and chemical waste contamination and the effects it has got on the machinery. So your routine test can identify compliance with ISO 8217 table 1 and 2. However, only further analysis can identify if chemical contaminants are present in this fuel. So there needs to be an understanding right now as to what constitutes a marine fuel and the acceptable sources. So this can be given in detail in ISO 8217 class 1 and class 5. Let's have a look at that. So what does it say? The oil needs to comprise predominantly of hydrocarbons and needs to be homogeneous. The source can be from petroleum, crude oil sands, and shale oil. It may be from synthetic or renewable sources, which are chemically like petroleum fuel. Flame can be blended into marine residual fuel oil, but it's limited by the volumes percentage specified in the standard. However, these are the important things. It needs to be free of deleterious substances, and it should not cause any harm to personnel. It should not hinder the safe operation of the vessel or cause adverse effects to the machinery. So these deleterious substances that we're looking at here can be identified by advanced detection techniques such as GCMS, which we will look a little bit more into detail. So what was the primary means of identification, which is identified by ISO PAS 23263 in 2019 was ASTM D7845. So these has got a specified targeted list of 29 compounds. And apart from these 29 compounds, using the same test method, Maritec can identify 22 more relevant compounds which are problematic when present. So more advanced techniques such as GCMS on solid phase extract can detect more higher boiling point compounds. It is numbering at around 30 now, which has been successfully used by P&I clubs during dispute resolutions to prove the fuel quality supplied as poor and it's non-compliant to the standards. So why do we do this? We are trying to identify the compound. We're trying to determine the root cause. We're trying to check for compliance with ISO 8217 clause 5. And using this test message, it can cover a complete chemical range of compounds. Now, we talked about 29 compounds, 22 and 30. There's a huge bunch of compounds that can be detected. So it's not possible to display all these compounds in the webinar, but we will be looking at an average detection level for each compound group and for the purpose, and we'll try to understand the issues behind this a little bit better. Here we see the average detection by ASTM D7845 for the commonly detected compound groups for each month in the year of 2021. We are observing an increased occurrence of reactive hydrocarbon compounds and phenolic compounds, which can play a role in causing poor stability of the fuel, depending upon the concentration at which it's detected at. So we can see that an average detectant range is around 1800 ppm for reactive hydrocarbon compounds, which is indicated in dark blue. And which is reactive hydrocarbon, we're talking compounds like indene, styrene, dicyclopentadiene, and about 1400 ppm for phenolic compounds. At this point, I would like to stress that there is no maximum concentration limit which is there in ISO standards. However, these compounds at the concentration level detected as shown here have gone on to cause fuel stability issues, which can cause machinery problems like excessive sludging and filter blockages like how it's shown over here. Moving on, when we look at the concentration level of more higher boiling compounds, we observe a greater level of polar non-hydrocarbon compounds once again, which can lead to fuel instability. These polar non-hydrocarbon compounds can only be detected by GCMS on solid phase extract. And almost all the detections that we are seeing here have been accompanied by machinery issues when the fuel is put into use. So it needs to be noted here that the major compound, which is alkyl resorcinol, is from shale oil, which is allowed as per clause 1. More specifically, shale oil, which is produced by the retorting process, which uses very high temperatures. So when you use such a kind of cutter stock, and when the presence of alkyl resorcinol is detected, it almost invariably leads to fuel instability and leads to sludging issues on board. And this is one of the examples. In this case, it forms a hard cake-like sludge, and you can say that this is in contravention to clause 5, where a chemical species that has been detected has led to a machinery issue on board, like complete damage to the purifier. Fatty acids and other two compounds, which is the fatty acids and monoglycerides, we'll discuss a little bit more on the next slide. Please feel free to post any questions that you have in the chat box. We'll be happy to answer it as and when it comes up. And looking at fatty acids and monoglycerides, FAME, or the production of biodiesel, right? That's where we're looking at. So it takes place through a process called trans-esterification of renewable sources like vegetable oils or fats. However, when the quality control is poor, we find the presence of fatty acids and monoglycerides in varying quantities. So this can result in an elevated acid number to be tested with fuel, and it's used as one of the signals to indicate the presence of such compounds in the fuel. So what have we observed based on feedback from the clients is that the primary effect is there on the fuel injection equipment. It causes rapid wear of the fuel injection pumps, and it can cause severe reduction to your maximum load that the engine can be operated on. So FAME, unless it's agreed upon by the receiver, has been limited by the ISO 8217 2017 standard to have 7% maximum for distillate grades, that is a DF grades, and a de minimis level of 0.5% volume by volume for RM residual grades. We talked a lot about the different compounds. Now let's have a look at how to identify the cautionary concentration levels. So I want to repeat here that there is no guiding limits from ISO standards. at the concentration level of each compound that can be present in the marine fuel. So Maritec has taken the initiative to collect feedback from the vessels where the fuel issues have been identified and any adverse effects to machinery has been found, which has been linked to these fuel issues. So by analyzing this data, we can provide the client with an empirical evidence of past cases where similar concentration profiles have gone on to cause machinery issues on board. So this empirical evidence can support machinery damage has occurred despite the best practices which can be employed by the vessel operator. So when this analysis can also be done preemptively, and then we can provide an effective warning to the vessel before the fuel usage using the same data analytics. So in addition to the previous one, every time you do a GCMS analysis, we can also identify the severity of the compound concentration found in comparison to similar profile fuels where the problem has occurred. So this can give the vessel operator a good idea on the severity of the detections that is being found in the fuel. So with this, I would like to say that the GCMS is a good test. It can give you a very good idea. And depending upon the feedback that we receive from the clients, we're able to advise them and support them on compliance with clause 5 of ISO 8217. Moving on, let's have a look at some of the VLSFO remedies that we like to suggest to you based on the detections and what we've seen in the past 1 year. So each of the issues that have been highlighted, they have solutions either by better fuel management or by an additive usage. So I would like to draw your attention to the remedies and what Maritec can do proactively to manage your problem. So when we look at stability, of course, the best practice is to avoid commingling of the fuels. You keep them segregated and you employ a certain pre-bunkering additive dosage so that you are maintaining the stability of the fuel over time. You can also do preemptive tests by SMS 1600 to check for the possible problematic fuels, particularly when you want to store the fuel for a long period of time. And because your TSP, as we talked about, it may not be a very good indicator anymore. Then when it comes to chemical contaminants, the solution is sometimes may not be readily apparent. In these cases, the lab can assist in further testing specific additives to the market to mitigate these effects. If those don't work, diluting the fuel with another may be a last viable option in comparison to debunkering the fuel, and it is subjected to the compatibility checks done by the lab. Cold flow issues, yeah, that's, as we discussed, can be managed preemptively by conducting the WAT/WDT analysis and an effective temperature management in the fuel system. Cat fines and combustion properties, these are more related to machinery performance, and these will need to be addressed on a case-by-case basis. So at this point, I would like to highlight the services a lab can provide to you. We're not limited to only providing you with an ISO standard report, but we want to work together with you in preemptively identifying problematic fuel and helping you assure operational reliability of your engines. In the cases where the fuel has gone on to cause problems on board your vessels, we are here to help you identify the root cause and to solve the issues. Further to that, Maritec is here to support you for any dispute that may arise on the quantity or the quality of the fuel that's being supplied. And lastly, we are here to provide you with statistical data that will help you enable to choose the best possible location and supplier for your bunker, and at the same time, having a holistic view of your entire fleet bunker quality performance using our in-house data analytics. So with that, let's move on to a little bit towards biofuels. We can have a short brief on it and what are the types and what are the issues that may arise on usage of biofuels. It's quite similar to VLSFOs and it's got a little bit extra also. When we're looking at biofuels, we're looking at three main types. The first one is your residual biofuels with blends of FAME, which is commercially available in the market as B10, B20, and more recently we are seeing B30, B40, which has gone on for trial runs, and we have seen certain success in that. The second and most recent type, or the second generation of biofuels, is HVO or hydrotreated vegetable oils, that is promoted as being chemically similar to petroleum fuel and is considered as a drop-in fuel with minimum modifications to your engines. the third type, which is BTL, which is biomass to liquid. And we're not yet commercially encountered this product in the labs yet, so we don't have much information on that. So the current ISO standards, they don't cater for these type of fuels. And the test methods used, with the exception of FAME content, is very similar to those that of Table 2 marine residual fuels. And that's what we are observing on all the certificate of quality documents that we are receiving. So there are certainly advantages switching over to biofuels, particularly of the drop-in category, requiring little or no modifications to the existing setup, and coupled with the reduced carbon, greenhouse gas, and SOx emissions, it's certainly an advantage. But let's have a look into some of the possible problems that can exist on biofuels and the test methods that can be employed to identify and mitigate these issues. So issues expected. So these are some of the common issues, which is like similar to VLSFO, owing because of the paraffinic nature of the FAME that can be supplied. So let's discuss briefly on each aspect. So we are mainly concerned with the presence of FAME in the residual fuel. So if you look at microbial growth, so FAME has got a great affinity for water and it forms a stable emulsion. So this FAME and water emulsion, like fuel haziness, which is quite common in distillate fuels, it can generate microbial growth, which can lead to excessive sludge formation and which can go on and clog your filters and affect your engine performance. So the best thing you can do is to prevent water accumulation in your fuel in the first place. You need to have good draining facilities and to ensure that the fuel is kept at a temperature where condensation doesn't take place. What are the tests you can do in order to identify if the fuel has got such a kind of problem? It's a total bacteria, yeast, and mold test, and that can evaluate the potential degradation of the fuel. Oxidative stability, it's already there for distillate fuels in the ISO DM grade. So, but FAME, when it's present in your fuel, it can oxidize to form precipitates, which can once again lead to stability issues and can clog your filters. And also it can lead to increased acidity, and these oxidized fuel components can go and damage your fuel injectors. So what do? We can do for F grade, you can do your oxidation stability test, and for residual grades, we still recommend that you do your p-value by SMS 1600 and also your total sediment existent to find out all the organic and inorganic sediments that are present without doing any treatment to the fuel. Moving on, we're looking at the low temperature operation issue. So once again, FAME has got a very high cloud point when compared to your petroleum diesel. And this can, of course, potentially cause wax formation at lower temperature, once again leading to the same issues that we discussed before. WAT-WT test is reliable and it can identify such kind of issues. Something which is more important is the corrosion issues. So corrosion issues can come either due to the FAME breaking down during the presence of water, and there's a hydrolytic reaction and it forms free fatty acids. And these species are corrosive and can attack your exposed metal surfaces. Or it can also be due to microbial growth, which can produce sulfide reducing bacteria, which can go and directly attack your corrosion of steel tanks. This is quite a common occurrence in your refineries. And this can occur also in your onboard ships when you start to use FAME induced products. And of course, similar to VLSFOs, which was highlighted, there can be a high detergency and the cleaning effect. So FAME in high concentrations, it has got a solvent and scrubbing action that cleans and removes the deposits from the fuel system. So depending upon the cleanliness of your existing system, over time, it may get better, but in the beginning, you can expect a lot of filter clogging. You can expect a lot of purifiers to get sludged up in the beginning, at least. The last and most important thing is your compatibility with materials. So at Maritec, we recommend that before you go for a biofuel trial, check with the equipment manufacturer on the suitability of the fuel that you want to go for trial. So the reason is because when you have FAME in your fuel, it is not so much compatible with certain metals which are present in, definitely present like brass, bronze, copper, all these lead and tin. These metals can oxidize in the presence of FAME. And your gaskets, which is primarily comprised of elastomers like nitrile rubber, neoprene, these can swell and age on continuous contact with flame, and then it can lead to leakages and sometimes even malfunction of your equipment. Other equipment which are made with polymers like your I would say your purifier O-rings, and these can also swell, and this can also affect your the basic properties of the material. It can make it more brittle. It can cause it to fail over time. So when looking at all these problems, so the biofuels that are entering the market, and some of it which is already there, they have their own set of issues that can be different from VLSFOs. So before you go for a trial or before you decide to implement this, you need to take careful care. You need to perform a risk assessment, and it needs to be done together with your equipment manufacturers and before you proceed for a trial run. So with that, I would like to end my short presentation, and I would like to thank you guys for your attention. It's quite a short one, and we value our clients. We hope to work together with the industry to support them for the testing needs, whether it be fuel, water, or hazardous material. As I said before, feel free to post your questions in the chat box. We'll do our best to address them during our Q&A session. You can also reach out to us on this email in case you have further clarifications. So on that note, I would like to hand over the floor back to Mr. Gabian Chew, our host. Yeah, Gabian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Bharath. Oh, this is definitely an interesting presentation, and the compatibility with materials section, right? That portion of your presentation is certainly something new. You know, I mean, like, yeah, a lot has been already reported about the oxidation, the corrosion, the pour point, but these are the compatibility with materials aspect. I believe we have not ever covered that in the editorial yet, so it probably deserves additional investigation.
Certainly, we'll know more once we start to test more of these biofuels.
Yeah, yes, and especially VLSFOs are not such a direct fuel to use compared to HSFOs, and when you blend them with biofuels, I'm not sure how smooth is it going to be. But anyway, thank you very much, Bharath, for the presentation. We now have Martin of Innospec. Martin's presentation today will cover the benefits of using additives with VLSFOs as situations which his product can assist in order to avoid a debunkering operation and more. Martin, the screen is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Gabian. Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I can see a lot of familiar names. Thank you for joining us and giving us the support. Thank you, Joyce, for organizing this, and Bharath for the very good insight or overview of the VLSFO from the testing perspective. I hope you can see my screen now. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm actually going to be sharing with you more on practically what we have seen in the last 2 years, especially when it comes to operation of VLSFO. And then, of course, I'm going to have a quick one on biofuel overview, the experience that we have as well. Okay, if you can see Innospec, just a quick one. Innospec, we actually listed in NASDAQ. I would say 80% of our business is on additives, and probably about 50% is about fuel chemicals. Okay, our corporate HQ is in Eaglewood, Colorado. Just in case those of you that don't really know us, our revenue in 2020 is about 1.5 billion. We have approximately 2,000 people across 25 places just working on additives. Yeah. In the marine segment, Innospec, we are actually represented in the ISO working group. I think you're very familiar by now. I think listening from Bharath's presentation, when you buy the fuel, is actually based on 8217, 8216, which is the classification specification of marine fuels. Although we are not there, although we are there in ISO, I'm not saying that everything in the ISO is correct. I hope we can have a chance to actually elaborate further on during the Q&A. Okay, we are also in the CMEC, or maybe you call it International Council of Combustion Engine Working Group 7. We have a lot of products that is actually verified independently by classification societies like Lloyd's Register, Class NK, and of course Shell. you can actually visit us from this link here, yeah, our website. Okay, without further ado, what I'll do is I would like to talk about VLSFO, the overview importance of 8217. Despite what I said earlier, I'd like to highlight again the importance of knowing the viscosity and pour point. Yeah, very interesting. Today, some people are not even testing the fuel, so these are very basic parameters that the crew should know. Okay, the part one, what I'll talk about is issues that we have seen. Break it down into part one, stability and waxes. Why do we put them together? We found that actually a lot of times the outcome or the end result is very similar. People are not able to differentiate this on board the ship. It is very important to differentiate this, otherwise you will apply the wrong solution. Okay, of course we will talk about best practices. And then second part is about combustion. I think post 2020, we have seen a lot of engine getting damaged, premature failure to piston ring and liners. I will talk a little bit on that. Okay, then a quick summary of the products that we have that was verified by NK, especially for VLSFO, and then a little bit on biofuel, and then of course, just one slide on what we can do for you in IMO, EEXI, CII requirement moving forward. We will need to contact you for that if you have any interest on that, because I only have one slide on that. Okay, this is my first slide. We are just trying to compare, to share with you how high sulfur heavy fuel oil is actually different from VLSFO. I believe all of us in the industry long enough, we know very well our heavy fuel oil. If you look at the VLSFO, I would say that the components are very similar. It's only the composition, or I would say the ratio is different. Why? Okay, we see a large proportion of paraffins. Paraffins are usually distillates. It can be middle distillates, light distillates. And the reason why it is in there is because it has got very low sulfur content, which is driven by IMO legislations. Okay, but at the same time, you also see that these paraffins, sometimes they are very high in wax. That's why you see the pour point going up. Okay, apart from that, they are actually both blended fuels. If you look at this table on the right, you can see that the viscosity have gone down significantly from the time we started using VLSFO. Density have gone down. MCR have gone down, which is a good thing. Net specific energy have gone up. CCAI, which is something that I think Bharath have spoken as well. I will elaborate a little bit more when I talk about combustion. This is the only parameter to show you, or maybe to tell you or give you an indication how well the fuel can burn. Is this correct? Okay, I will tell you. The good news is, of course, aluminum silica is down, which gives the purifier less pressure to remove the cat fines. And of course, the sulfur content is as per the requirement. Okay. Okay, why is viscosity so important? From this slide here, I would like to share with you what we have seen across globally from what we have gathered. VLSFO can range from anything from 20 CST all the way up to 380. Okay, but what is the break like? Okay, in 2021, approximately 70% of the global supplied VLSFO ranges from 20 to 180. Why is it so important to know? I will share with you. Okay, viscosity actually dictates the purification temperature today. It is very, very critical. In the past, on the ship, we always run on 98 because it's a 380 CST. Okay, today, every batch of bunkers that you receive, people needs to know that the purification temperature is different. Okay, this is sometimes given by the fuel testing company. Why is it so important to know? Because overheating is not good. Underheating is also not good. You want to have optimum heating. Okay, I will elaborate a little bit further on that when I talk about waxing. Viscosity gives you an indication if the fuel is aromatic or paraffinic, based on my last table. Okay, why do you want to know this? The reason why is because when the fuel is aromatic, they don't like fuel that is paraffinic. Okay, these two fuels can't go together. So if you're commingling, or maybe even doing bunkering where you have a little bit unpumpable, you want to try to avoid mixing, for example, a fuel that have got CST 20 and something that have got 200 CST. This is going to give you a perfect storm or a disaster. Okay. The second point that I want to share with you is actually, I think Bharath have spoken quite a lot on WAT, WDT. I'll not elaborate on that so much. A pour point. Okay, why is pour point so important? Okay, you see a pour point from Innospec experience. We have seen there's a lot of VLSFO that have got high pour point, which is somewhere here. Okay, again, the yellow bar the green bar indicates the pour point. About 50% of the pour point of the VLSFO is actually between 21 to 30. Why? We say that this is high and you need to pay attention because there's a very high likelihood that this fuel will also tend to have very high WAT and WDT. I will not elaborate so much on this. It's a bit repetitive, but I will talk about this when I go to purification. We have seen a lot of waxes happening in purifiers that have been mistaken as waxes. Yeah. Okay, keeping storage temperature at 10 degrees above the pour point is the rule of thumb that we have applied for many years, but today is questionable. Again, because of the blended components, this has actually driven up the WAT, WDT. So maybe you need to increase 15 to 20 degrees. Yeah, like I said, overheating is also no good. So it's actually a catch-22 situation. Okay, from Innospec perspective, what we do is we analyze all this problem, we put them together, and then we are also trying to actually see if we are able to tell what kind of problems you can predict from just looking at the viscosity, yeah, which is the graph on the left side. You can't really tell, it's actually across the board. Similarly, with density, there's nothing much you can tell, except for this yellow triangle here. We found that most of the engine damages, example, premature failure to the engine, piston ring breakage, liner polishing, is due to a long, prolonged burning of high density fuel. We found that actually high density fuel don't burn so well. Yeah. Okay, this is TSP. Like Mr. Bharath have spoken very in-depth on TSP. From our perspective, okay, TSP, for I think most of you will know, is one of the parameters in 8217 to predict the stability of the fuel. Is this accurate? So we plot a graph, we call it TSP versus issue. Okay, don't get me wrong, whatever that you see here are all 100% of the fuel that actually gave us problem during operation. Okay, this line here, which is the limit for your 8217 ISO TSP. Okay, whatever that you see on the right side, which is here, they are all fuel that are actually off spec. Okay, these are the number of problems we saw. You would actually expect to say that by right, if TSP is accurate, then all this should not be here at all. Yeah, whatever that you see on the left-hand side should not be here because these are all fuel that is perfectly on spec. However, we are seeing actually more problems coming from the on-spec fuel. Yeah, so that gives you a question: is TSP really reliable? Okay, again, like I said, when we break it down, we saw like about 59% are separation failure, 7% solid in tanks, a blockage of filters 18%, cold flow is 2%. You'll probably ask me why cold flow 2% when I earlier said that, you know, there's a lot of pour point issue. My explanation will be a lot of people on the ship are not able to identify. So when they report as cold flow, we just marked it as cold flow. Most of them, maybe this part, a lot of solid in the tanks are actually cold flow. Yeah, but people can't really make out on the ship. About 14%, which is this portion here, are engine damages, which we have seen. Okay, let me share with you what are the part one of fuel issues that we have seen: stability and waxes. Asphaltene sludge caused by fuel instability or commingling. I think many of us are familiar because asphaltenic sludge is something we saw even in the past with heavy fuel oil. Okay, so we say that this issue is reversible. Okay, you remember probably before 2020, many people are cleaning the tanks. Okay, whatever we found in the tanks before 2020 was asphaltenic sludge. So you use a good chemical, you circulate them, and then you are able to reverse it. So we say this problem is manageable by fuel chemical. Okay, reversible. Okay, what is the second problem? The second problem is actually distillate oxidation stability or aging. Like it or not, like my age, I will not be able to reverse it. Yeah, that's why we say this issue is irreversible, which means only prevention from the beginning can be done using additive as well. That is why we have a new range of additive just specially to tackle this. In the past, when we are treating heavy fuel oil, we don't talk about this. Okay, but what is the drawback? The drawback is you are not able to control the age of the fuel before it comes on your ship. Especially during the turn of 2020, we have experienced when the ship bunker the fuel, the next moment it is gone because this VLSFO have been sitting on the VLCC outside Singapore for months, heated and aging. So when they come on board your ship, even if you treat it with chemical, you can't do anything. It's too late. Okay, what is oxidation distillate? It is a process where the distillate fuel is actually absorbing oxygen from the atmosphere. That's why we call it oxidation. Okay, the next one is actually waxing or high pour point, WDT. Okay, like we said, we are able to manage this only by heating. Okay, however, heating will accelerate stability issue. When you heat, the higher the temperature, these two will kicks in faster. Okay, I don't have time to elaborate on this. We have a very nice bulletin which we will share with you. There are also people claiming that they are able to treat it with chemical. Yes, we do have a PPD CFI for MGO because the range are small. Like I've showed you earlier, VLSFO have got a wide range. To find one particular product that works on all VLSFO is almost impossible. It's probably easier striking a lottery. Okay, chemical contamination, I think Bharath have mentioned, we perform GCMS. Okay, the statement that we want to see here is, they say here is not so much of major issue we have seen with VLSFO. What do I categorize as major issue? Major issues are issues we saw in 2018 with Houston bunker, where a lot of fuel components were damaged. Engine components like your fuel pump, your injectors, they were damaged, seen with VLSFO. So VLSFO, we have not seen this. What we have seen with chemical contamination are mainly minor, and we call them stability issue. We categorize them as minor. Okay, these are very familiar photos. I hope you don't get them too often. I do get them almost every day. So you can see here, these are all asphaltenic sludge. The nature of this sludge, you can tell a little bit hard. You need a tool here to actually break them up. Okay, the next one is oxidation stability. Okay, we've seen this after prolonged storage. That is the reason why from the beginning people say that this fuel you should not store for too long. Okay, these two photos here, okay, this photo here is actually pure distillate. Why do we show you pure distillates? It's because if I put this in the VLSFO, you probably can't tell. It looks like just any other sludge. What we're trying to tell you here is distillate do have a sludge. Yeah, this one is not reversible. You have to prevent it from the beginning. Okay, this is how your MGO actually looks like when it's fresh, when it is aged, and you need to preserve it. Yeah, this is with a lot of sludge at the bottom, or we call it gums sometimes. Yeah, gums. Okay, storage with heating. If you store it with heating, you actually accelerate this process. Yeah, but there's no choice. You are heating it because you are preventing the waxes. Okay, stability is a factor of time and temperature. I would like to show you a graph to relate this. Okay, this graph is actually quite interesting. This x-axis is actually the number of days, yeah, 0 to 240. And then, of course, the y-axis is reserve stability number. It is another way to predict stability of the fuel. We are very familiar with this. Of course, there are many methods available. You have RSN, you have p-value, you have p-ratio. But from our perspective, this is quite a reliable test compared to TSP, much more reliable. Okay, what we're trying to say here is this is the line 5. Indicating that the fuel is stable. Whatever that is below, the fuel is stable. Of course, for the purpose of the test, we took a fuel that is stable. Okay, what we did was we simulate the different temperature. At 20 degrees, this fuel will take, which is indicated by this green line, the fuel will take approximately 30 days before it turns to become unstable. Now, what I'll do is I'll increase the temperature to 30 degrees, which is this middle line here. The fuel is actually stable for only 14 days before it becomes unstable. And then 40 degrees, the very common temperature we maintain in the bunker tanks, it is only lasting for less than 10 days before it becomes unstable. So what we do, of course, is our interest is to actually try it with our product. And then, of course, we saw significant improvement, which is this fuel, this particular fuel was able to stay at 40 degrees stable up to 180 days. Okay, there's a disclaimer here. This is to show you that all the fuel have got the same pattern of behaviors. I'm not saying all of them will have the absolute numbers. Okay, some fuel, even with or without treatment, it might be just around this range. Some fuel that is not treated might be stable for longer, some is even shorter, but the pattern is very similar. I hope that is clear enough. Okay, waxes, very interesting. I think that most of us that have seen fuel on the ship, we probably might be able to tell that this is waxes because this look a bit like grease. What about this? And what about this? You can't tell. Even with us, so much of experience looking at the black stuff, we can't tell. So what you can do is probably you can only analyze it in lab. Okay, this 3 examples. These 4 examples, I would say, is a combination. Okay, so what you're trying to do on board the ship is more like try and error. Okay, but it's important to know or what are the causes. Okay, VLSFO is known to have waxing issues due to blended components used to produce VLSFO, like I've said earlier. Okay, this can be seen with high pour point. Many VLSFO today, 50% of them have got a pour point of above 21. This is something that is a good point. Okay, I'd like to make this comparison to high sulfur heavy fuel oil. Maybe you would like to guess what is the average pour point of high sulfur heavy fuel oil. The answer is actually 15. 1.5, less than 15. Okay, it's the average pour point of high sulfur heavy fuel oil. Why is VLSFO with so low density and viscosity having such high pour point? Yeah. Okay, sometimes waxes found in purifiers are mistaken as asphotinic sludge, which is very common. We see them, especially how waxes might form in purifiers. We are seeing it happening very frequent, especially on low viscosity fuel. Why? Okay, this is the table. I believe many of you are familiar. Like I said, viscosity dictates the purification temperature. Today, if you do a test with Maritec or whoever it is, what they'll tell you is if you have the fuel with this temperature, this is your corresponding purification temperature. Okay, what happens here? Like what Bharath said, at any point of time during storage, if your temperature have gone down below the WAT, what you need to do is you need to heat the fuel up to above the WDT to dissolve the wax. Let me give you one example. If you have a fuel which is 22, yeah, CST, but the pour point is probably 25, yeah, it is quite common. 25, my WAT could probably be, by rule of thumb, I'm supposed to heat it 10 degrees above, so it's 25 plus 10 is 35. But my WAT, if I don't know, might be actually 40. And my WDT could be 52. And then if you look at this, when you're purifying at 50, it is actually not sufficient. So that is why we said sometimes whatever you see in the purifier, they are actually not sludge, but it's waxes. Okay, I'll share with you one case scenario. This ship, I've taken out the name, of course, not the name, but the company. Sorry for that. I don't think you know this ship anyway. Viscosity 33, pour point 15. Okay, sediment 0.02, perfectly fine. No indication at all to say that this fuel is bad. Laboratory said maintain temperature 25, which is 10 degrees above, perfectly fine. Recommended purification temperature 60, which is according to that table. So what happened? So this ship was actually using our additive HF10 plus from the beginning. So we said that, yeah, we are quite confident that at least issue number 1, I would say 90% eliminated. Issue number 2, 50%. We suspect that this could possibly be wax. So we told the chief engineer on the ship, why don't you start increasing the temperature in steps of 5 degrees? So the chief engineer increased, and this is what he came back. Purifier now observed minimal sludge generation as we started to adjust the temperature setting of the purifier inlet to 75. Okay, in steps of 5, 65, 70, 75, and then observe. Yeah, what we told them is if you go above 20 degrees from what is recommended in the table, and if the problem is not going away, then you should reduce it back. Then the problem is not wax, the problem is something else. So in this case, we told them you should stop at 80, but of course 75, they saw that the thing was actually gone. So this is a very good example of a try and error kind of method. If you use a chemical, you are able to eliminate. If you don't use a chemical at all, you can't tell. It could be sludge, it could be wax, so you need to do that as well. Okay, so what is this? This is more interesting. We call it insufficient heating during winter months. We saw this in the tank. We saw this in the purifier outlet. We took this in the workshop. Temperature maybe about 38, 40 degrees, the fuel is frozen. You heat it up to 90 degrees, the fuel starts to flow. Why? We see this happening many times, especially a ship coming from colder areas. The fuel is not heated, high pour point. Okay, this is the illustration of the tank. This is how the bunker tank looks like. Not the best drawing, the best I can come up with. This is your bunker tank, heating coil. This is your suction. Okay, what will happen is if the fuel is not blended properly or unstable, and then if it is kept over for a long time, if insufficient is heating applied during storage, the fuel might break up into different layers during storage. You have the heavier components, lighter components, lighter components, lighter components. What is the solution? The solution will be you need a longer heating time and temperature, and maybe even circulate within this tank. Okay, a very good comparison will be like if you're drinking a chocolate drink. Okay, what happened in the photo in in the before was this shape was taking suction before this tank was homogeneous. It's like when you're drinking a chocolate drink. If the chocolate is sitting at the bottom, if you start taking the top, which is the lighter components, what will you find at the bottom? Chocolate, heavy chocolate, like same thing. So in this fuel, you really need to make sure that it's homogeneous, heated correctly. Maybe longer heating time means, I would say 20 degrees above the pour point, maybe 7 days, because we also noticed that a lot of chief engineer, they only heat for 2-3 days and they start consuming. It's a big problem, especially high pour point with long storage. Yeah. Okay, this will lead me to my last slide on summary. From our experience, about 50% of the fuel-related issues can be avoided if managed correctly. These are operational issues. Okay. Example: correct heating and pre-combustion treatment. Meaning to say, whatever you're doing with your purifiers. We have seen many cases, people not knowing the good viscosity, the viscosity pour point. They are not heating it at the right temperature, overheating, underheating, and doing all sorts of things. I would say 50% can be actually eliminated. Very important to know your fuel. Yeah, that's why I said testing is something that you need. You need to know the fuel is unlike every batch of VLSFO. It is different from high sulfur heavy fuel oil post 2020, pre 2020. Okay, although ISO 817 specification is questionable, some of the parameters are still very important in determining the characteristic of the fuel, for example, viscosity and pour point. Okay, so our advice is when a vessel is experiencing sludge from filter clogging or separator failure, we need to determine if the sludge is due to stability or sludge due to wax. So if it's wax, we call it wax, and we don't call it sludge actually. Yeah. Once the root cause of the issue is determined, vessel can then take the right steps to eliminate. Most of the time it is done by try and error method. Okay. If you do not know the root cause, then you probably be applying the wrong steps. We have come across people using our additives, and then they said our additives actually don't work. But so with our help, actually, they are managed to solve the problem. Okay, so what are the best practices? First in, first out. Avoid prolonged storage. This is something that is very important. I would agree that many of the technical people said this is beyond our control. Okay, no choice. If you can, try to do this, especially when the pour point is high. You don't want to heat it for too long. Okay, if the storage is over 30 days, then you need to treat it with chemical to prevent aging and oxidation from the beginning to maintain the stability. Avoid commingling. If there's any unpumpable from the bunker tanks, try to limit to below 5%. However, if commingling is unavoidable, ensure that the fuel commingle have a viscosity difference of up to 30. Okay, what do I mean by this? If you have one starboard with a bunker of 100 CST, what is the fuel that is going to come in will be limited to 70 and 130. That will actually lead you to my first chart to show you the paraffinic and aromatic of the characteristic of the fuel. You don't want something with this 20 CST with 200 CST. They don't like each other. So this is one of the very good steps that you can follow. Ensure that the fuel is heated during storage, especially cold weather condition. However, again, when you heat, you need to consume as soon as possible. Okay, if not, ensure sufficient heating is applied approximately 7 days continuously to 20 degrees above the pour point. That scenario that I've showed you, we told them this because 2-3 days and 10 degrees above the pour point is not enough to bring that fuel back to a homogeneous level. Okay, knowing how much to heat and when to heat is important. Okay, WAT and WTT sometimes comes in handy. So pay particular attention when the fuel is above 21 degrees. Yeah, that is when you need to do. Okay, that's the first part. The second part that I'm going to cover is actually talking about engine combustion. Yeah, if you have any question, please post it there. We'll try to answer. We have sufficient time, I hope, later on. Okay, encounter piston ring damage liner polishing after 2020. We have seen quite a lot. What is the current practice on board? Whenever people is experiencing this, what they'll do is they will increase the frequency of under piston inspection, just because they want to check the condition of the piston ring pack. Many of them are also doing alternating of BN40 to BN100 weekly, can be 2 days, 3 days, depending on what is the condition after the inspection. Okay, this is recommended. Of course, the OEM recommended cement coating rings. A lot of people are also using drain oil analysis. They want to see what is the residual BN and also if you have any metal carried over. Okay, and of course, maybe CLO, we're also talking about category 2 CLO. Okay, it's going to come. What is this category 2 CLO? Category 2 CLO is basically a BN40 CLO with 100 BN detergency. We are talking about detergency here because we need the detergency to clean the engine. Okay. Okay, what are the earlier findings in the industry? What the industry suspect? Poor detergency of BN40 causing excessive carbon buildup in the ring packs. So what they do is alternate CLO to gain better detergency from the higher BN fuel. So when you see this condition in your engine, what you will want to do, I will either increase my feed rate or better increase my detergency. So I changed to 100 BN. However, excessive BN, because you don't need so much BN, because your sulfur is low today. Base number is to neutralize the acid produced by the combustion. Okay, when you go on high BN, what is the problem? You have a lot of excessive calcium carbonate, which looks something like this or something like this. This is going to give your liner scuffing. So what you need to do is a balance. Okay, you need a balance. Okay, let me just ask you one question. How many of us have seen this condition when we were running on MGO? Okay, MGO with 40 BN, we don't see this. But we never talk about detergency when we run on MGO because the combustion is good. We don't need cleaning. There's nothing to clean. So what we are trying to say here, why nobody wants to talk about combustion? I will share with you. Okay, what the OEM have said in the beginning, CLO grades, everybody is pointing towards the direction of CLO. OEM, I hope none of them is here, but I don't think many of you will disagree. They are happily selling rings and liners. Yeah, so they said cement coating rings. Existing condition of the liner might be a problem. If your liner don't have the capability to hold the CLO, yes, that is something that you need to look at. Okay, that's a very common misconception in the industry. What they say is marine engines are designed to burn poor quality fuels like high sulfur heavy fuel, right? Combustion properties of VLSFO are better. This is a wrong misconception. I will tell you why from our findings and many people from the industry as well. Okay, this is very interesting. I don't have time to go through the full article. This guy was actually from ExxonMobil. What he said, CCAI is an index developed in the 80s to tell you the combustion property of the fuel. Okay, as such, CCAI was 40 years ago. It's a test result essentially calculated based on density and viscosity levels, may show that the fuel is good, but when it arrives on board, it may not burn well. In the worst case scenario, the engine can become seriously overloaded and rings will break. Yeah, not firing correctly, rings will break. So from here, what we know is CCI is actually derived from your density and viscosity. So there's no way we have seen VLSFO that actually have a bad CCI, but that doesn't mean that the combustion is good. The number is going down, indicating that it is good, but exactly what he's saying, we agree fully because we have seen many cases like this. CCI going down doesn't mean the combustion is good for VLSFO. Yeah. Okay. The other one, probably you might have seen this, us publishing this bulletin as well. Another Japanese gentleman, Takasaki-san, he's a consultant. He actually predicted this. He took 2 samples, yeah, high sulfur, low sulfur, with the same CCI, put it into an engine. I think most of you that is here, if you're an engineer, you understand what this is. Okay, this is the combustion, the flame, and of course, high sulfur heavy fuel extinguished after this flame. What happens to the low sulfur fuel? You have something called afterburning. Yeah, this afterburning. This afterburning is of course due to ignition delay. So what he says is ignition delay after burning will cause impingement on your liner surface. This flame will attack your liner and it will remove vital CLO, causing engine damage. So this is something that we say even your category 2 CLO is not able to rectify. You need to rectify the problem of ignition delay and afterburning. Yeah, this is our position. Okay, what have we done? Okay, this is the estimated cetane number average for high sulfur heavy fuel oil. This is for MGO. You can see it's over 40. And this is about 20. So why do we say that misconception? That person, that OEM said that all VLSFO are better than heavy fuel oil. Not true. This is the VLSFO. Heavy fuel, VLSFO number 1 to number 6 actually have worse combustion or estimated cetane number compared to high sulfur heavy fuel oil. Yes, 7 to 18 are better. And in fact, 18 onwards are even better. But this is not all. This is most of the VLSFO are better, but there are also some. Okay, in the case where you have engine damage, it's like if you're running prolonged with this kind of fuel. Yeah. Okay, what have we done? Okay, we have done a lot. This is comparing poor, this is a FIA FCA test, okay, comparing poor quality VLSFO and typical VLSFO. We saw the difference, ignition delay, animate combustion. What we're trying to do is to use combustion catalyst to improve the curve. Okay, this is what we see, estimated CTA number, the improvement 7%, end of main combustion 5%. We have actually also tested it on many types of fuel as well. Yeah. Okay, this is one case scenario that I want to share with you. This case is one of the customer that was actually running this new liner, new piston ring after only 80 hours. They saw a huge deposit of calcium carbonate and then a lot of this. This is actually a result of the burning CLO. So what happened? They actually feeding it. Many times, a lot of people, when they see all this problem, they keep feeding CLO, which is going to be catastrophic. So what happened to the liner, which was new after 80 hours? Both of them look the same, but number 2 became like this. This is scuffing. It should look like this. So what we're trying to say is, we have seen a lot of cases, people coming to us like this, but combustion doesn't ring a bell to them, which surprises me. People talk about CLO. Yes, we are not saying that CLO is not the problem. You need to have a good balance, but at the same time, if you have done the balancing, if you think that the fuel is not burning well, then you should give the fuel some assistance. Yeah. Okay, so we have 2 products that we came out after 2020 for VLSFO. HF10 Plus. This is a basic dispersion stabilizer just to take care of the 3 problems, of stability of this fuel, which is verified by NK. The other product, which is a more premium product, also takes care of the 3 problem and the combustion problem. Yeah, we have a combustion catalyst. What we do is improving the combustion property. Okay, what did we do with class NK? This is a test that was done according to the Japanese Ship Association method of evaluation of marine additives. This is how the fuel looks like when it is not treated. You have agglomeration of the sludge at the bottom. When you treat it, it is looking homogeneous. I think I'm running out of time. I'll try to speed up. Biofuel, we have seen many unstable biofuel, mainly due to bad blends, what Bharath have said. Prolonged storage again, oxidation, contamination. Okay, bacteria is a problem because biofuel mainly are derived from vegetable. So vegetable, they bring in a lot of bacteria, fatty acid methyl ester. Okay, this is some of the things that we have seen. This is sludge at the bottom. This is when the biofuel is at low temperature. You have a lot of grease in the filter clogging as well. Do we have a lot of experience? Yeah, like what Bharath have said, water is required for microbial. Yeah, it will not grow without water. Microbial in general lives at the water, fuel-water interface. Water at the bottom, yeah, and you have water, you have biomass, and then if you have diesel. So what you can do is, of course, remove the water. Okay, this is something that we have seen. It's more like cancer. It's actually by a bacterial attack on the fuel pump. It's very corrosive. Yeah, you can see. Yeah, so do we have experience? Yes, we have actually a test to do. We call it filter blocking tendency. You can see these are all the fuel that we have tested outside marine, and then these are all the filter tendency base fuel numbers. What we try to do is we are trying to stabilize this, and we try to reduce the filter tendency numbers. If you have any experience or you are trying anything, please come to us. Okay, what is the best practices? Avoid prolonged storage again. I don't see this problem with trials because many people during the trial, they don't keep them for too long. Even storing, you need to decide where you want to store them because it should not be beside a compartment that is heated. Good housekeeping, minimize water contamination. Draining, nobody actually drain diesel oil tank, but it's very important. Biofuel. Okay, use a stabilizer to prolong the shelf life of the fuel and to prevent a filter clogging. If you suspect that there's bacteria, then you might want to use biocides to prevent bacterial growth, mainly from FAME. Yeah. Okay, that will bring me to my last slide. I hope I'm not going too fast. I only have one slide. I believe all of you know EEXI CII, Carbon Intensity Index. We have already worked with Lloyd's and many other classification society with a protocol whereby we want to actually test on board your ship or any ship to verify the SFOC consumption. I believe many of you are actually going back to the class to check where are your ratings for your CII, A, B, C, D, E. What we can do is, of course, reduce 2 to 3% of your SFOC. Okay, this is one of the paper that we have published with CMAC talking about engine cleanliness, long-term usage. And at the end of this paper, there's a summary of the fuel economy that was actually reported using Optama products. So of course, we know in this requirement, your target every year is 2%. From 2023 onwards, you need 2% saving. So it's not really significant what we can give, but I think today everybody is trying to look for something that can help you with even 2 or 1%. Yeah. If you have any question on this, we have a long presentation on this. Please contact us or we'll contact you for this. That's all. Handing over back to Gabian. I hope I'm not running too late. Thank you, gentlemen.
Hi, Martin. Thanks, Martin. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. It seems that 2 years on from IMO 2020, people are still having issues with VLSFOs. And I think it's quite amazing what additives can do to help improve the quality and parameters.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I think that there's already a backlog of questions from our audience, which we will attend to now. So the first question goes to Bharath. Okay, Bharath, someone asked, when it comes to statutory compliance for sulfur and flashpoint, does ISO 4259 apply?
Okay, so statutory compliance for ISO when it comes to sulfur and flashpoint. So we need to look at this from a lab testing perspective, and we also need to look at what the regulations say about this. So when we receive a sample and then we test it, and then it goes above the specification limit, let's say for VLSFO 0.5, it becomes 0.51, 0.2. Then MEPC Circular 882 defines how to do the retest. And this is the recheck criteria that is being followed by the lab. And the result that you see is already in conformance with this requirement from MARPOL Annex 6. So you cannot say that ISO 4259 can be applied to the final sulfur result, which is coming out from a lab which is doing this in accordance to MEPC Circular 882. So the results, I think, for a manifold sample should be considered as absolute at 0.5% mass per mass. And in the case of the result exceeding this value, then the supplier has failed to provide a compliant product, and you need to go back to him and for retesting and further verification. And the same thing goes for flashpoint also, because SOLAS clearly states that no fuel oil with a flashpoint less than 60 shall be used, because the operative word here is shall, which means that you ideally cannot have a fuel which is less than 60 degrees. And with regards to sulfur and flashpoint, we say that we should not allow any ISO 4259 allowance for this. Yep.
Thank you very much, Bharath. I think that was quite clear and straight to the point.
Yep.
So yeah, we have one from another member of the audience. Okay, he would like to know if there's any suggested additive for adding to VLSFO to improve stability and other parameters. And also, if yes, what is the best method of dosing? Is it directly adding to the bunker tank, or is there any other method? I think this question is best answered by Martin.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. Let me just recap. Yeah, definitely. Actually, what I want to say is adding additives is not going to change the parameter of your ISO 8217. I think all of us will probably agree that is actually not so important. What is more important is actually operation. We are using additives to actually prevent operational problems on the ship. Yeah, like I said, it is not going to change the TSP, but is TSP after all also important? It is not. What you want to see is actually you have a trouble-free operation. Okay, how to add this additive is the best way is definitely prevention. We say prevention is better than cure. I think during my presentation, I've actually said that there are also some issues where you are not able to reverse the issue. Okay. Secondly, there are also people asking, what if my fuel is on spec? Yeah, everything on spec. Do I need to actually use additive? Of course, even if I'm not selling additives, I'll say yes. Because like you said, if you go to a doctor tells you you are clean, you're clean build, that means you're healthy. But the problem is today, our industry, the standard, if you get a clean ISO 8217, doesn't mean that you will not have a problem. Yeah. So the best way to dose it is prior to bunkering into your bunker tank, because today I think the mixing is much more straightforward because VLSFO have got very low density. In the past, we put it in a tank. We have the question of like, will the fuel and the additive mix properly? Even at 380 CST, after a couple of days with heating and the rock and roll of the ship, yes, you can have good mixture. I hope I've answered the question.
Okay, thank you very much. I think if a layman like me can understand it, I'm sure our audience can too. Okay, we have one more. We have another question. I think I'd like to put it to my CTI-Maritec from a rather curious member of the audience. Okay, it says, Bharath, the slides have mentioned about ISO 8217 colon 2017. However, my charter party clause is 2005 or sometimes 2010 or 2012. How does this affect my compliance with clause 5 when the fuel is off spec?
Oh, okay. So when your fuel is off spec, then the fuel is considered as off spec. That is, if you are not conforming to the specifications of table 1 and 2, then of course it's a straight cut case. However, when we're looking at the differences between 2017 and the remaining standards when it comes to clause 5, so what we're seeing normally is that our clients, most of our clients are on 2010 or 2012. Then, but like how I mentioned in the slide concerning about the fuel composition, so the 2017 edition, it allows for more variability in the composition of fuel. That is, you can have fuels from renewable sources. Also, you can have fuels which are chemically similar to residual fuels. And so this is the difference between, primary difference between the earlier clauses and the 2017 edition. And also when you look at the limits for FAME, the limits for FAME for the 2012 and the lower version, then you can see that the FAME content de minimis level for residual fuel increases from 0.1 to 0.5, which again allows for more variability in the fuel quality. So if you want a general piece of advice from Maritec, I think we would say that when you have a charter party agreement, you try and include the ISO PAS 23263, which is a guideline which is targeted to address specifically VLSFO quality issue. You include this in your bunker purchase clause. By that way, you're better safeguarded when it comes to clause 5. I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Bharath. I hope that also answers the question. Then, oh wow, there's this. Okay, Martin, I think that this question is for you, but I don't know how to ask it to you in a very politically correct manner. So let me just ask it as it is, okay? Martin, why do some people say fuel additives are associated with snake oil?
Wow. Well, thanks,
Yes.
Gabian. I think that's not a very straightforward answer. It's not easy. Okay, let me tell you from the perspective of okay, I think Innospec, like I said earlier in my introduction, we are a company that actually selling fuel treatment chemical and additives. That is about 90% of business. So if we can actually sell in terms of fuel, we are actually 50% of our revenue comes from fuel additive. I think it's not so bad if we are snake oil seller that we can be listed in Nasdaq with that kind of revenue. So I think myself, 20 years in the industry, when I came to Innospec, I also have issue in identifying which are the additives that is actually working and which are not. Okay, the problem is it is really difficult because sometimes we are treating it on the ship, on a fuel that is not actually having problem at all. So from my perspective, I would say you have to look at the profile of the company. Okay, we have seen you need to select a company which is specialized in the industry. When I say in the industry, it will be a fuel additive industry, not the shipping industry. Why am I saying that? Today in the shipping industry, we know of companies where they provide one-stop center. Okay, they provide anything from cleaning chemicals to cooling water chemicals, safety equipment, welding rods. Okay, but are they really specialized in fuel chemical? They are not. Okay, Of course, but when it comes to marine, they are. Okay, water remains the same from day one. However, we know that the fuel have changed since the usage of fossil fuel, especially in shipping. Okay, secondly, there are also people claiming that, there are chemicals that actually work wonders. I can do with one chemical stability, cold flow, bacteria, biofuel, combustion, and the list goes on. So I think that's very important. You need to look for a company which is industry specialized. In this case, I would say the additive business and a reliable supplier. I think the company profile is very important.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin. I think we got a rather technical question, at least from my point. It's quite technical. I would like CTI-Maritec to answer this. Okay, there's a chance where we might have high wax appearance temperature or wax disappearance temperature fuel, and likewise an unstable fuel. What can one do if this occurs based on your charts and the impossibility for a vessel to heat up its bunker fuel tanks to 70 degrees Celsius?
Oh, 70, that's very specific.
Yeah.
Okay. So like, I think Martin has also identified the same thing as us, that we need to identify that whether the fuel is truly unstable, and whatever resultant issues that you're facing on board your vessel is either occurring due to asphaltenic sludge or it's due to the formation of wax in the fuel oil system. So if I'm able to understand the question correctly, that means the guy is trying to identify what they need to do when both the problems exist. Then if that's the case, then you need to try and identify the balance operational temperature throughout the fuel oil system so that you're not causing thermal instability. At the same time, you're not allowing wax formation. So what you can do in this case is that you can conduct a preemptive stability test by SMS 1600 to check whether the sample is stable in the first place. Then your wax analysis should tell you your WAT temperatures at the same time also. So that way you can get a minimum temperature of storage and to see whether it's going to affect your stability of your fuel. Now let's come to a case where this is for a case where the sample is actually stable. So let's think about a case where the sample is truly unstable. Then unfortunately, it might come to a point where we're not able to identify the wax appearance temperature or disappearance temperature because because of the way the test is being conducted. We can try to filter out the sample and then try to identify the WAT result. We had some success with that, but we don't know how repeatable that process is. So the best advice we can give, like how we said in the presentation, if you know your WAT, try and keep it at WAT. And if your stability is poor, then you need to try and find the balance in order so that the fuel is affected to the least amount possible. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Bharath. I think that's pretty clear. Okay, Martin, I think there's one more for you. This one I'm not sure, so it's quite a challenging one. Okay, Martin, what can you do if you get on-spec fuel but still face fuel issues?
Sad to say, unfortunately, from this industry, this is what people are seeing every day. That's why the question of ISO reliability is a question mark. Can we change this? It is a long process, but I believe all of us know that ISO is very lopsided. It is favoring the suppliers more than the user. So back to the question, I would say that if your ship is getting an off-spec fuel, you have better choice because you can go back to the supplier. But if you have an on-spec fuel, it is up to the owner what they want to do. They can debunker, or they have to struggle to use it. So I believe in this case, what you can do is you can only work with very closely with your fuel testing labs and even chemical suppliers like us to find the best solution and to just eliminate or maybe minimize the operational issues with the fuel. I've seen a few cases where we have successfully done it. Some cases, of course, not. Similar to our product is not the efficacy is not 100%. It's like your vaccine for COVID today. There's nothing that is guaranteed. But of course, it's always good to come to us earlier rather than after months. It's like when you have a stage 2 cancer, you need to go to the doctor now and not when you have stage 4. Because time is an essence in getting the things right here.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin. Actually, Martin, since we are on the topic of ISO, right? I noticed during the presentation, you guys are trying to, you guys are introducing a few methods to find the stability of the fuel, you know? So, I mean, like, if TSP is not accurate, right? Why is it still part of ISO?
I think at this point, we need to ask the ISO committee as to why they are having that still in place. But let's see what the future edition brings about.
All right, sure. Maybe it's maybe I open the can of worms, but okay. All right, so I think it's quite close to ending, and now we have time for one last question. From my list, I think this question goes directly to Maritec. Okay, this one I'm sure I don't think it's quite a technical question, but okay. So question goes to Bharath. When I do all the additional tests indicated in the slides, right? Will this come at an extra cost and may it blow my fuel testing budget?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, okay, fine. Let's tackle this in a little in the best way possible. Like, so if I'm to understand, you have a problem and then you're doing additional tests and you're afraid of the extra cost that comes. And okay, so VLSFO has got the issues which we have identified in the webinar. So these problems can occur in your onboard your vessel. And we have also pointed out that routine test is not capable of covering all aspects of the VLSFO fuel quality and the problems that might come. But there is also another way that where we have a technical advisory that is sent out with each report, and based on the current fuel quality trends, we can flag each and every parameter. And let's say, for instance, if your TSP goes above a certain threshold limit, we can preempt you to do this p-value test. So that way, or let's say, for instance, if your acid number goes above a certain limit, we can ask you to do the GCMS test based on the region from which the fuel was from and our past experience of recent fuels that have had problems also. So by this way, I think you will have a better control over your budget, and you can actually justify to your boss saying that, yes, this is for the operational safety of the vessel and we need to do this test. So by that way, I think you're justified in spending for the additional tests apart from your standard testing. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bharath. I think the time has come to almost end the webinar. But before that, I would like to ask the panelists if they have any final thoughts to share with our audience. Let's start with Bharath first.
Yeah. Oh, thank you everybody for attending this webinar. I know there are some questions that have not been answered yet. We'll do our best to get back to you individually on this. And I'm quite happy that most of the thought process that has taken place with Maritec, and we are more or less in alignment with what Innospec has seen independently from the market. And what we're talking about with regards to TSP not being the best parameter to identify, yes, but unfortunately we're stuck with that, and it's still a struggle that's going on. And of course, when it comes to identifying the actual wax appearance temperatures and the different possible formation of sludge, that's also something which has been pointed out very well by Innospec, and we are in total agreement with that. What you see is what is more important than an actual testing report, which is also can help you, but your onboard observation and the way you manage your fuel is much more important. Yeah.
All right, Martin.
Yeah. Thank you. From my side, on behalf of Innospec and Cosmos, I'd like to thank everyone of you joining us. My last word is actually being a guy from the ship before, I would say that knowing your fuel is very important today. VLSFO is unlike what we experienced in the past with high sulfur heavy fuel oil. What we have experienced is that people on the ship, which is our eyes and our hands on the ship, they need to really understand the challenges that they are facing. So if you are able to breach that, I think there are actually much issues that we see on board the ship can actually be minimized and eliminated. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Martin. Okay, before we finish the session, I'd like to offer a short closing speech for the webinar. It's only appropriate to do so. Okay, the push towards decarbonization has resulted in the majority of ship owners adopting VLSFOs to meet IMO 2020 regulations. So, however, our experts today from CTI-Maritec and Innospec have undoubtedly proved VLSFOs are not as straightforward to consume as a bunker fuel, unlike heavy sulfur fuel oil. So even today, we are still battling with poor stability, short lifespan, confusing cold flow properties, and lubrication procedures of VLSFOs. So it's proven that these are fuels which need to be understood in order to be used correctly. But it does not help that even VLSFOs differ from each other. So a solution for a particular bunker stem of VLSFO might not even work on the other. And such is life now. So further, I think many ship owners are already experimenting with biofuels in preparation for IMO 2030. With some even trying out blends of biofuel and VLSFO. So to a layman like me, it seems quite troubling, but I'm sure to the shipping professional, this is decarbonization and the price the industry needs to pay to move forward. However, it's fortunate ship owners have access to services to make this situation more manageable. So as we head towards a multi-fuel future, I expect bunker testing agencies and marine fuel treatment chemicals to play an even more important role in helping ship owners prepare and adopt new types of green bunker fuels for decarbonization. So with this, I'd like to express a big thank you to Bharath of CTI-Maritec and Martin of Innospec, who have joined us today at the VLSFO Trends, Issues and Best Practices webinar. So I'm grateful to the teams at CTI-Maritec, Innospec, and its Hong Kong representative Hostmos for organizing this event and inviting Manifold Times to be the moderator. To our webinar attendees, I thank you all for attending this event, and do note we will be circulating unanswered questions to the speakers after the session. Thank you all once again, and I wish everyone here a happy new year ahead.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.